We're so happy to have you join us today for another fabulous Power to Fly Chat and Learn event. So before we get started, I just want to go over a couple quick housekeeping items, especially important if maybe you haven't joined us for a Power to Fly Chat in a while, in which case we're so happy to have you back. Or maybe this is your first event with Power to Fly, in which case, welcome. We're so happy to have you and have you participate in today's session. So a couple things first. I always like to ask people if y'all want to participate. So go ahead and look in the chat right now. I want everybody to throw in where you're joining us from. I'm coming to you from Toledo, Ohio. This is land that was traditionally occupied by the Fox and Kickapoo tribes in my area. So please let us know where you're joining us from. If you know whose land you're on, we would love to see how far our global audience spreads. Now, you'll see up on the screen some quick housekeeping items. This is where you can, kind of make the most of today's event. So what you need to know is that you don't have to turn your cameras on if you don't want to. I love to see your smiling, maskless faces safely, but truly, if you don't want to, it is completely fine. There's no need to be Instagram perfect or worry about privacy. As long as you stay muted, you will not show up on the recording or on the live stream of today's event. Now, if you have any further questions about that, please feel free to let me know in the chat. But you can also participate in different ways. If you want to ask questions to our speakers or raise comments, let us know what you're thinking. We would absolutely love to hear from you. So if you want to do that, you can do it in a couple different ways. My favorite, and the one I recommend, is put questions or comments in the Zoom group chat. I'll be there hanging out during today's session, and I would love to raise any questions or comments you have for our speakers. Anything you'd like, please feel free to send. Now, if you have a question that you want to ask anonymously, not a problem, y'all. Just DM me. You can find my name, Meg Alexander, in the drop-down menu on your Zoom chat function pop-up window. So I did mention today's session is being live streamed on our YouTube channel as well as to our website, and we are also recording today. So what that means for you is that you don't have to, you don't have to take notes. You don't have to, you can just get to kind of sit back and relax. You get to enjoy this session and, kind of take advantage of an hour spent to yourself. Y'all, you took time out of your day to be here and do this for yourself. That's a hard thing to do, to carve out time for ourselves in this day, this day and age. So I just want y'all to give yourselves a pat on the back and get ready, because you are about to witness some really great conversations. Now, if you are interested in the recording, everybody that registered, so whether you show up today or not, stay for 5 minutes, bounce in and out, doesn't matter. Everybody that registered is going to get an email from Power to Fly in about 1 to 2 business days that'll have a link to where you can rewatch this recording on our website. Now, let's say that Kevin says something today so like mind-blowing, unbelievable, you cannot wait to share it with a friend or a coworker or a relative. We would absolutely love to encourage that. So if you would like to, you are absolutely welcome to head over to our YouTube channel. It'll be posted there within about 5 to 15 minutes of the end of the live stream. And we are so happy to kind of dive in and get started here. So last but not least, Power to Fly's mission is, we have a lot of them, honestly, at this point. We want gender parity in the workforce. We want pay equity. We want true diversity, representation, inclusion, and belonging, in all areas of our lives and workspaces. So if you are also, passionate about these goals and you want to help us to achieve them, we would absolutely love to do that. So if you would like, please feel free to take photos or video as we're going. Please feel free to share out. Let your social media networks know that you are learning with Power to Fly today. You can tag us. We are at Power to Fly on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. You can also use our hashtag Power to Fly. We would love to share, repost, retweet, whatever you are willing to share with your groups. The more people that we can let know about Power to Fly and the amazing resources that we have totally free for all y'all, we want to get these in the hands of as many people as possible. So please feel free to spread the word, and we would just love to see that. All right, so last but not least, before we dive into questions, I'm very excited to introduce you to today's speaker. Now, Kevin Hyer is the CEO of the Hyer Calling Foundation. Now, they are a Philadelphia-based nonprofit that reduces the stigma of the disease of addiction in the workplace to give people in recovery a second chance at a career. Now, in the decade before founding the Hyer Calling Foundation, Kevin held in-house positions with the SEIU and Compass Group USA, and he also practiced in the employment law and labor relations group of Obermeyer, Redmond, Maxwell, and Hippel. Kevin, I am very excited to get to talk to you today.
Likewise.
Is there anything else about you that you want our audience to know? Anything that you think is germane to the subject or that we haven't shared with them yet?
I'm an employment attorney. I'm 42 years old, and I'm in recovery from crystal meth addiction. That's a good starting point.
Thank you for sharing that. And then real quick, we had a call this morning that reminded me of this, so I wanted to make sure we did it. In case y'all are interested, I'm going to do a visual description for myself as well as our speaker. So my name's Meg. I am a white 30-something woman. I have purple hair. I'm wearing a white t-shirt, and I have blue glasses on. Kevin is a white man with reddish hair. He has a yellow tie and a black suit on, and he's sitting in front of a white wall. So if you have any other questions there, I hope that was helpful for everyone. If I've done it incorrectly and you know how I'm supposed to be doing this, please tell me. I'm more than happy to learn and grow. All right, Kevin, let's dive into questions here. Now, we got some absolutely amazing ones. Let's stop sharing the screen so we can focus on our speaker. And I can't tell you how excited I was looking over these and really, really excited to dig in on them. So thank you for sharing with us about your story and your addiction. Can you tell us a little bit more about how that led to you deciding to form the Hyer Calling Foundation?
Sure. So I'm an employment attorney, as I said, for 10 years after law school. I represented both a major labor union and a large corporation in the world of work. Worked with HR managers, union leaders, employment attorneys. It was the academic study of the workplace. And at the age of 40, I kind of had an early midlife crisis. I should say 39. I was newly single, staring 40 in the face, dangerously close to 40, as I put it. And despite never having used drugs, I made a mistake. I had gone to the beach in Rehoboth, Delaware with my friends one weekend, and it was kind of think like how Stella got her groove back, except with a gay guy. And I used a little humor to add some levity to her. I made a mistake. In the moment, I tried, and within 8 weeks, I was shooting up in crack houses in Philadelphia, very much out of a job, and set my life on a very different pathway. Life comes at you fast. So that's the backstory. I spent 18 months or so addicted to crystal meth. I overdosed in the summer of 20, ended up on a dialysis machine for 10 days. And it was after that that my parents realized their adult son clearly had a drug problem. And I entered recovery, and I started the Hyer Calling Foundation, which is a play on words of my last name, Hyer, to go do what I think my higher power asks me to do, which is break stereotypes of particularly meth addiction, but all addiction in America, and give folks a second chance at a career. Because good people can have this disease, and they deserve a second chance. And we add to the diversity, equity, and inclusion of an organization too. Recovery is DEI.
Absolutely. I mean, these are one of the things we talk about when it comes to diversity is invisible diversity, or things that are not readily apparent about a person, and this is one of those. Wanting people that come from different backgrounds and different paths in life and different schools of thought is important, and this is yet another
it absolutely is.
Yeah,
absolutely is.
So you had a career in law. I was a paralegal for 6 years, and I don't know if you feel this as well, but I do. I feel like there's a ton of people in this country that do not, because they've never interacted with the legal system or the justice system, have no clue that truly any one of us is about 1 to 2 bad decisions away from being involved in it, right? Yeah. And until you're in the system, it is really, really difficult to kind of explain to anyone else what this does to your life, right? Now, I had a DUI, 10 years ago now, 10, 11. While I was working for attorneys. And so, I absolutely, I can see and I can tell you how my life changed before and after, and the kind of hoops I had to jump through, things that were involved there. And I wasn't even facing addiction on top of this. So, one of the things that I think is really important about Hyer Calling and its mission is that destigmatization, right? I think a lot of people heard about the opioid crisis as it grew. And so the stigma around having a family member that might be addicted was maybe slightly less because people had a little more familiarity with it. But do you find that that comes into play with Hyer Calling and its mission? Like, do you find that the stigma is the biggest thing you're fighting?
Absolutely. As I alluded to earlier, and it's not really relevant to the story, but its context, I'm gay. I have never faced any real homophobia. I have faced prejudice for having had an addiction, and I underestimated it when I started it. Fortunately, though, that underestimation motivates me to go do the work I do. So rather than complain about it, I sit here and think, wow, okay, we really got to roll our sleeves up. And that's what we do. I underestimated a lot of things about addiction. It's a disease and it sucks living with it. I mean, very honest, I'm transparent. I wish I didn't have to live with the disease of addiction, and I wish I hadn't tried crystal meth, but I did try crystal meth. So here's where we're at. And I'm trying to help other people with this story. You alluded to the justice system. I'm not justice involved. I was very fortunate. I would have been eventually. I mean, it would have been inevitable with a drug like crystal meth. I was an end user, so I wasn't someone that was on the police's radar. But good people make bad decisions from these drugs, and alcohol too. Alcohol is just as bad. I've seen that in my family because of how it impairs your judgment. And then what happens is these folks come out of addiction, they're in recovery, they're new people, they're taking on the world, but they're dogged down by the consequences of those bad decisions that don't come from who they are as a person, but they come from how the disease changed them. And there are no shortage of examples from my life of certainly how crystal meth addiction impaired my judgment. I fortunately was never arrested, but it still had an impact on my life in terms of my relationships and my health. I spent 10 days on a dialysis machine. I had the sacrament of last rites given to me. I was gravely, gravely ill. My parents cleaned out my home thinking it was easier to do before a funeral when they could at least cling to some hope rather than after. And I have another sibling that's been devastated by addiction. So this disease has touched our family very much. So that's part of the passion. So all that said, part of what I like to do is help people with justice involvement. To say, look, they're good people, they made mistakes, they deserve a second chance. And a lot of our services are oriented around that at the foundation.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely wonderful. Thank you for sharing this. Okay, so one of the things that we wanted to talk about was some of the negative self-talk that can come with, with situations that you might find yourself in due to addiction. And I found this, I honestly really found this, and kind of who I am as a person. I tend to talk down about myself because that way, if I'm doing it first, then nobody else is going to be able to do it better, or they're not going to try to one up me because I already know, kind of a mess. Do you think that this negative self-talk, for me, I felt like I kind of had to do it, right? For other people, so that I was acknowledging what I had done to kind of every single person. Do you think that that negative self-talk ever really stops?
No, I'm sure it never really stops, but I think how you channel it and how you harness it is probably what's most important. For me, I feel very, very fortunate. I focus on gratitude neurotically. Like I say to people, imagine if you're working on a Word document, you don't want to lose it, you save it compulsively. I focus on gratitude compulsively because I never thought I would have a chance at even a small image of professional redemption. And the motivation I get around this, the purpose, the meaning from running the foundation and trying to demonstrate you can come back from serious addiction. I had a serious addiction to arguably the most addictive drug. Nothing releases more dopamine than methamphetamine. And I used it in the most extreme way. I had a very serious addiction. That you can come back from it and help other people, embracing the 12 steps, which I wholeheartedly do. That gives me such meaning and purpose and gratitude that it kind of tempers down that negative talk. So it's there, but I have my insecurities like anybody, but I focus on what I'm doing here. And it's also helping keep me sober. Addiction's not curable. It's incurable, it's progressive, and it's fatal. But the gratitude, the meaning, and purpose you get from that second chance drives the pull of even the strongest addictions down to a manageable level with treatment. And if there's one thing I could bottle up in this session with you, it's that. It's the purpose of something, the meaning you get from it, the profound gratitude at that second chance helps pull the power of the addiction to a level that you can manage through treatment and 12-step meetings and such. That's my opinion.
I think that's a very, very good point to make. There's not a magic pill that does it. There's not one single thing that you can do. And it's a lifelong thing. And I think, that's a really good way to put it. Addiction is a lifelong thing. It is also not curable. And I love that you talk about how it's fatal, because like life is fatal too, but like we want y'all to be around here as long as possible.
I need to say what I'm about to say, because I think I use levity, as you saw. You will die from the disease of addiction if you don't get treatment. It's not even just going to jail, because people do drugs. Okay, we all know that. And if you don't get treatment in jail and you get out of jail, since most people eventually get out of jail, the disease has been progressing while you're in there. Right? There's an expression we use in recovery that says, well, you're in the rooms of recovery, your disease is in the parking lot doing push-ups. All right. That's why the risk of death increases over time. It's heartbreaking. And that's why there are people who've been sober for 10 years. Something happens, they lose their sobriety, they have a drink, they do drugs, and they die. This is a serious, serious topic. And that's why I want to give people that second chance. And that second chance comes from getting help. And getting help comes from being able to talk about it. And being able to talk about it comes from reduced stigma. And stigma gets reduced by breaking stereotypes. So that's my opinion. Others may disagree, but that's how I see it.
I love this. I happen to agree with you. If you do not, let us know in the comments, or if you do,
please
shout out. We want to hear from y'all. We got 45 minutes left in the session today. So if you've got questions, please feel free. Kevin was very excited to take y'all's questions. So feel free to send them in.
This is a higher calling for me. And I take so seriously that I have the opportunity, and because of my life circumstances, I didn't have a family, kids. I had a good run as an attorney for 10 years. I was able to walk away and do this. I didn't lose my law license. I didn't have any justice involvement. I walked away voluntarily to do this because I saw the heartbreak around this disease. It's devastated my family. And what I also try to talk about is what I saw in that 18 months in that world. Good people can have serious, serious addictions. When you hear the stories of how junkies got addicted, I was sitting with them in the crack houses. I'm very real with this. Sexual assault, domestic violence that's not handled effectively. Someone with prostitution, they were trafficked. They didn't even ask to be in that situation. Okay. Twisted family rituals. Like, at 12, I started smoking weed with my dad. 15, we did some coke, and by 18, moved on to meth. That is how an element of America lives. And they're not bad people, they're diseased people. Addiction is generational. The trauma that the adults experience affects the children. And even if there's not even trauma, the stigma of the parents' addictions traumatize the children. And then they go on, whether or not there's a genetic predisposition, but often there is, to self-medicate it through drugs and alcohol. So a tragic cycle begins. Addiction itself is a cycle. By definition, addiction is a cycle, but then it becomes a generational cycle. We have to stop it. And my desire, my foundation is to basically figure out how to stamp it out. We're never going to fully do that, but that's how I think. We think big here. Let's stamp this out in the next 10 years. Let's roll up our sleeves and let's do it. And I'm giving you my thoughts on how to do it.
I very much like that. And I like coming back to gratitude. I feel like it feels like a cliche, but only because it's so true that everybody repeats it. If you can be grateful for the things that you have in your life and you start with that, it is a lot easier to see the things that you have than the things that you don't. And it's not just that. For me, being able to see the things that I have makes me forget about the things I don't. I don't need those anymore. I have different things. So I don't know. I'm going to get all in my feelings about this. I completely agree with you about the higher calling thing. I've talked ad nauseum on this channel. I lucked into this job. I have no idea how I continuously fell upwards and got here. But now I have this amazing platform to be able to speak on things like addiction, things like mental health, gendered violence in the workplace and at home, things that really resonate with me. And so I love talking to people like yourself, because you are also very excited. You have this platform. You can't wait to see.
This is sincere. I have many flaws, and I'm not saying we do everything right at our organization, but this is sincere. This is I mean everything I'm saying to you all. I want to add one point. When we talk about gratitude, the stronger the addiction is, the more you have to be grateful for. You need more of the gratitude has to be real. What's not fair to somebody is to give them a very small, like a real second chance. You have to really be given something to have profound, indescribable gratitude for. I don't think it's fair to somebody to give them, I just gave you a part-time job where I'm paying you barely above minimum wage. Be grateful for that. Well, yes, you could be. It's something, but to really pull down the power of serious addiction, and I've faced it. The way I describe meth addiction is, imagine like something from the clouds, like pulling you towards it. And it comes down stronger and stronger, and you have to resist it. That's how I see it for me. And what I resist it with is, again, profound gratitude that I have even a shot at professional redemption. And then the purpose I get around this, and then the meaning from it. You know, I'm helping other families escape the heartbreak my parents did. You know, I have a brother I haven't seen in 12 years. The last time I saw that brother was an intervention field. He had an alcohol problem. This was the 46th Christmas my mom hasn't seen her brother since he died by suicide from untreated addiction. This disease has devastated my family. And I thought I had escaped it. I mean, I had never done drugs, guys. Anybody from my past will validate this. I had many flaws, but I was this overachieving gay kid from the suburbs that was trying to always do the right thing. And, you know, I had a good career. You know, I drank in my frat days in college, and, you know, I had my messy moments with alcohol, but I was not an alcoholic. I may have tried edibles once or twice. I had never done drugs. I got caught up in the moment. You know, I thought I'd escaped it because of what I saw. Clearly,
well, and you get to a certain age, and I think people just forget about it. It's like they think peer pressure is not a thing once you leave your 20s, and it's like, no, it's still a thing. Like, it is. So yeah, I think that that's really an important thing to highlight, that, you know, just because you are at a certain place, either in age, in you know, race, in class, in status, in your career, that doesn't matter.
I think in my case, I was in, I'm as transparent as I can be tastefully. In my case, I was newly single and secure about it. As I said, staring 40 in the face, someone offered it to me, and in that moment, I went with it. You know, we make decisions, we make mistakes. Some mistakes have bigger ramifications than others, but yeah.
Yeah, some people decide to go skydiving, other people take a different path. Like the thing that you have to remember is that, like, when people come to these points, no one's born a junkie. You know, you're just not. You have to think about it in terms of, you know, not the person being characterized by their behavior, I guess. I think that's important to remember.
Well, it's a disease. You're not your behavior, though you have to be held accountable for your behavior. And some of the real services we get into, the stuff that, you know, I'm so proud of, is we help folks talk about their prior addictions in a way that does own what happened, but also shows they're new people in the selection process and even after they're employed. So we have a host of what I call collateral wraparound services. That's the easiest term I know for them. It's basically no-cost post-rehab support services that insurance typically doesn't cover, that help you get a second chance at a career. All right.
That is
and one of them is how to talk about this stuff, because it takes a surgeon's hand. You know, if you go too far to accountability, there are people who use it against you. We all know that. On the other hand, if you don't take enough accountability, though, that can be off-putting too. You know, made a mistake and you're a new person, and you demonstrate, and again, this is also what I charge organizations a consulting fee on, is how people can demonstrate that. You know, we're a 501c3, by the way. Any revenue we bring in from donations or consulting fees goes back into the service we provide. All
right. So, okay, I love this conversation about, you know, how to kind of find that line, right? Because I also experienced this when you were talking to people about it. You know, you had to, I felt like I had to display a certain amount of, not necessarily humility, but like penitence every single time. And it got weird, right? Because it's like, well, I do feel very guilty and very, very sorry, but I'm not going to feel those exact same feelings every single time somebody asks me about that. So, you know, for me, a lot of it was a weird combination of trying to be positive about what I was going to do next, while still feeling like I kind of had to neg myself a little bit of like, yeah, I really messed up. And like, you kind of had to have that conversation all the time. When you're, you know, in this world where you're going to have to talk about this a lot, how do you stay positive about, you know, about your sobriety, or about what has happened and what your future looks like now?
Absolutely. And I try to use some tasteful humor at times. Kevin Hyer developing a crystal meth addiction was pretty juicy. It wasn't if people knew, it was what they knew and how exaggerated it was. Okay. I mean, I am not saying my story is any more special than anyone else's, but lawyers don't every day in big prestigious firms get addicted to meth and then ultimately overdose in a field and get found by someone driving along, spend 10 days on dialysis with a needle sitting nearby. I am so passionate about trying to overcome this, okay, and show people, you know what, I can come back, and I am doing that, and I know that, but I don't say it arrogantly. I say it as I want to demonstrate that yes, you can come back from the most serious of addictions. So I say, you know, I had a serious addiction to one of the most addictive substances out there, arguably the most addictive, that I use in the most extreme way. Yeah, crystal meth is it's evil. The root of all evil friends is crystal meth. It's not money. Money could be theoretically used for all good things. Meth is man-made. Every other drug comes from the earth. That's a separate exchange. But when I get negative self-talk, what moves me forward is I get such satisfaction from helping people, and especially also with the meth community, because it's a community, helping them, those folks, because there is such a stigma to that, and it's so damaging, that tweaker in a trailer park image that clearly, as I'm showing, is not accurate, all right, because it's not good for those people. They internalize it, and then they think of themselves, and they rise to the occasion.
Yeah, you know, I mean, if everybody's going to be looking at you and treating you and talking to you a certain way, it becomes very difficult to fight that when you're seemingly the only person that thinks that that's not cool. So it's hard to be surrounded by people that are telling you who you are, and you know, sometimes those voices get louder than
drug addicts know they're drug addicts. And what I mean by that is, again, I'm being completely transparent, but you're saying this is the best way I know how. They know, and I used to sit around talking about it. They know that, okay, and they know how unacceptable it is. But I think many of them get to a point where their lives are so dogged down by the wreckage of the addiction that they don't see any hope moving forward. And this is at least one thing that gives them some satisfaction. And there is a culture, it is a community. Now it's dysfunctional. I mean, they're all paranoid and psychotic, and you know, they will ultimately try to extort money from you, even if they were your friend the day before. I went down that road. But the point is, they've been rejected from everybody, you know, and then they think that's the best thing out there. I'll never forget somebody once saying to me when I told them I was going into recovery, but the sense of community that existed in the world of methamphetamine, at least gay men with the meth addiction. You know, how tragic is that? That the best shot of community is a serious disease that will land you in prison or kill you. Yeah. So, you know, I'm out there really trying to put a face to this, and try to say, you know, good people can have addictions. You know, they can. I have many flaws, and we deserve a second chance. And the beauty of it, it's not even just a soft appeal to it. It's that we bring something to the workforce. You know, that emotional maturity, that insight. You know, and it is DEI. And I'll tell you one example of why it's inclusion. Think about holiday parties. We just came out of the holiday season. Oh, you know, friends, next time you plan an office party, be aware there's some people that may not be able to come because alcohol is going to trigger them. It may not even be for addiction reasons, but more often than not, that's probably why. You know, they're going to be one-offs that can't drink for medical reasons. But the bottom line is there are people like that. They aren't included. So if you truly believe in inclusivity, I'm assuming everyone here does, that's a great example of why recovery is DEI. I assure you there are recovering alcoholics that are not going to come to your holiday party, some of them, if alcohol is going to be served. Yeah, I think that's a very, very good point. Yes. Okay, let's talk about staying positive and staying sober in the face of high stress and anxiety. You know, this stress and anxiety impacts people in all kinds of ways. And I cannot imagine that it's any easier with the added, you know, intersectionality of being in recovery. How do you handle the stress and the anxiety in a way that is still supporting your recovery? Okay. I think a lot of it's self-care in general. I mean, so many of the things that we learn in recovery can be applied to life in general. You know, my mother and I used to talk about, she was not in recovery. She didn't have an addiction issue, but the 12 steps, the idea of embracing a higher power and doing the next right thing, and knowing that, you know, if you do the next right thing and you embrace these ideas, life unfolds as it's meant to. I think that's what keeps me at a manageable level of stress. I mean, I certainly deal with it. You know, I mean, there's tremendous stigma out there. Not everybody is excited to reduce the stigma of addiction. You know, no one's actually like being, you know, actively challenging what I'm doing, but they're certainly not necessarily supportive of it. So when I get stress, I try to do things anyone else would do, you know, eat well, go to the gym, get a good night's sleep, drink lots of water, you know, things like that. I see a therapist, I have no problem saying that. You know, I go to my home group, but to find the stuff in life that gives you meaning. All right. And then that helps manage out the stress, at least for me. I mean, I'm not a mental health professional, but that's what I do is what's important in life. Well, I have two parents in their 80s. Spending time with people that I'm not going to always have, that's important. That puts stuff in perspective. You know, that old cliche-ish line, nobody on their deathbed says, geez, I really wish I spent more time at the office. You know, they don't, you know, I built a few more hours, you know, so that's how I do. And in the workplace context, that's also where you need to have a healthy environment that you, for HR managers listen, you know, is facilitate that culture so that people are struggling, they can talk about it. Like one of my, if the world could be run by me, okay, we would have employee resource groups or affinity groups for people in recovery and their allies, as I put it. Clearly, being gay or lesbian is not the same as having an addiction. But there are some parallels with the success of the gay and lesbian rights movement that can be applied to this. And it was sheer numbers. Everybody knew somebody was gay or lesbian. It's hard to hate somebody you know and love. Okay, that's why the gay rights movement came so far so quickly. I think if everyone who could safely come out as having been in recovery did that, I think it would change a lot of people's perceptions. But they can't because they're afraid, because they don't want to get canceled. You know, again, I use humor. I feel like in this cancel culture, that's what's going to happen. For many people, that's their fear. And I was able to walk away and risk getting canceled.
Well, and it's the risk of that
and I have been
vulnerability,
canceled by some
right?
people, but I don't care.
Yeah.
What?
Well, it's that vulnerability, right? You in sharing this with someone, you are opening yourself up to potential, negative ramifications. And I think
People
you're
don't
right.
forget it when you tell them you had an addiction. It's not like saying I had, went out for Chinese food last Friday night. You can't take it back.
No,
But
it
that's
sticks.
why they're doing
They'll
this
remember
work.
that, even if they didn't get your name the first time, they'll remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what your experience was like when you were re-entering the workforce.
Okay.
Can you walk us through what that was like for you, and how it's helped you to give advice to other people following in that same path?
Sure. Well, in my case, I initially did start to look for other employment. There was a position I wanted to get that ultimately would not have worked out because it would have required a government clearance, and having disclosed methamphetamine would have prevented that. Ultimately, I chose self-employed, which is what I'm doing here. So I've not had to go through a selection process talking about it, but I do effectively in the sense of trying to develop relationships with business partners and the people I'm working with in the community. So I relate to some extent with it. You have to own it. All right, because people with addiction, in my opinion, again, I'm not a mental health professional, I'm simply an employment lawyer helping people in recovery, comes from ineffectively managed trauma. Okay, and we all have different trauma. It doesn't matter what mine is. I alluded to insecurities staring 40 in the face. You have to accept that that trauma is not your fault, but how you managed it to a degree, you have a hand in it. So owning how these mistakes happened and then how you learn from it. That's what I would recommend people do. But just as you shouldn't go around telling people you changed if you didn't, don't go around saying you've learned from things if you haven't. Or if you haven't learned, Maggie, here's one, admit it. Just hear me out on this. It's possible that life's an evolution and a journey. So if there's something that you didn't quite figure out yet, you can disclose that in an interview, and it doesn't mean that you've sabotaged your candidacy. In fact, you probably get some people's respect for being candid. And that's what recovery is about, is rigorous honesty. And anybody listening to this who's in recovery knows that, and when you make a mistake, promptly admit it. So I think if you frame this appropriately, the next piece I'd get to is why are you bringing up your recovery in the selection process? If it comes off as if you're doing it to in any way be manipulative, try to get sympathy, that's not the right thing. But if you can tie it to the position, it makes sense, okay? If you're disclosing your recovery because you need to go to a home group at a certain time, so you want your schedule adjusted, I think that's legitimate. If you work your recovery into bidding on vacation time a year down the road, you're going to justifiably have people resent you. Because I'm not sure I connect the dots. If there's a dot, I think your audience has been what I'm saying. You have to understand why you're disclosing it. Are you disclosing it because you can't come to the office party because of alcohol? Are you disclosing it because people using the word like drunk and junkie and tweaker is offensive to you, or because you have a family member with that, or are you doing it to be a special snowflake? Well, that's, we know how well that tends to work in the long run.
Yeah. No, I think that you make a very, very good point. All right. So when you talk about, kind of walking that line, since you haven't had to do this with, on it for your own personal experience, what do you tell people? What is your big advice for people who are in recovery and trying to go back to it?
Sure. Well, I think the first question, again, we keep it very real here at the Hyer Calling Foundation, is are you going to be able to? If there is justice involvement, some of that is going to preclude certain things. We had a client somewhere in the United States who worked in insurance, and a felony conviction did make him ineligible to go back to that. But there's lots of things you can do. And I try to have such a message of positivity, identify those transferable skills. So I think one thing might be, as you go back into the workforce, is taking an accurate stock of what you really are prepared to do. Because the last thing you want to do is go out there and get a job and have someone give you that second chance, then fall on your face. One, it makes the recovery community look bad. But more importantly, it's going to make it even harder for you to bounce back. So I think the first step is taking an honest inventory, just as we do like a personal inventory in recovery. I'm a big 12-step guy. I'm not going to say there aren't other ways to find recovery, but it's how I found recovery. And that is what we talked about here. I don't force it on people, but if you ask how I did it, that's how I did it. Take that personal inventory, professional inventory, and then find, we work with people once they're employed too. We offer mentoring and coaching through the International Coaching Federation. It's all for free. Everything we do is designed to help you secure employment and then maintain it. Doesn't do much good to get a job if you can't keep it. So look at what are you good at doing and what have you learned from? Do you have a profound emotional maturity and sensitivity from having seen, junkies as I have, and I'm just using the word to get reality. That really moves me. I get a tremendous sense of drive from speaking for those who I know cannot speak for themselves, or if they did, they would have no credibility. But not everyone's going to get that same sense, and that's okay. We need people to have different things. So I think maybe the first question is ask yourself honestly, how has your recovery improved you as a person? What lessons did you learn? And then that may affect whether you disclose it. The bottom line is if you've burned through 4 or 5 jobs in the last 10 years and there's justice involvement, I think you're going to have to disclose your addiction was around it. It may not be necessary to. And in this atmosphere of stigma, I think if you don't have to disclose it, don't. All right. But if you need to, I think there are ways to do it that will help promote the idea of recovery being DEI. But this is a new idea. No, those of us on LinkedIn that are promoting it are kind of trailblazers. We're the radicals out there. And I never thought of myself as a radical, but I am apparently right now from some of the thoughts we're getting. So, it's starting to pick up steam. I'm certainly not the only person saying this by any means, but I think that's the first step. And then work your network. And if you burn through your network, as many people do in addiction, we also help people rebuild professional networks. We do networking events for the recovery community and our allies, as I put it.
Oh, I love that. That is so awesome.
Yeah, well, and then here's the other beauty. As you start to bring your life back together, the people who saw the old you have a tendency to come back around. And if they don't, again, I'm a higher power guy, Hyer Calling Foundation. It's not who your higher power wants in your life at that moment. And maybe it will change, maybe it won't, but it doesn't matter. Focus on moving forward. But I do find usually as you get your life together, people have a tendency, if you make amends, to give you a second chance.
I love that. And I want to circle back to something you said in the middle there about, about recovery as DEI and as something that does separate you from the pack. Truly think about those things, so going through my DUI taught me a lot of things. But one of the things it gave me was, a much stronger sense of responsibility. I was a lot more able to admit my own mistakes. I became much, much better at calling myself out on my own bullshit. And so that's the thing. So think about these things this is one of the things we tell people, and it usually comes up in terms of soft skills more often than not, but think about the kinds of things that you know how to do. And that not everybody can pick up a phone and make a dentist appointment, right? There's plenty of us that do not want to do that, but you might absolutely be able to do that. So make sure that you highlight that. Do you have, great skills in dealing with combative or hostile people because you have this history?
The other thing I would share is, this is again, all part of the services we offer that again, are all for free. We help people discover these things. Okay. So you're not left doing it alone. And the other thing that I see as a strength of our organization is, if you go, and again, I'm very real, if you go to a home group, you're going to start to get to know people, and they're in my home group. People have helped each other network. It's a matter of time. It's really not as fully anonymous as it always seems, but it starts out that way, and that's the framework. That's not the setting to go do professional networking. There's a time and a place for everything. All right, it's not that. You may develop friendships in that networking, but that's not what the purpose of those meetings is. So that's why we're so excited that we can help people have mentors, the networking, because there's not something in the recovery community really for that. In rehab, you may meet some people, but again, when you're in rehab, your mind is still clearing, and you shouldn't be thinking about going back to work in rehab. You should not be, in your group meetings in rehab, focusing on getting back to work. You need to focus on getting healthy. So we're trying to fill a void in the market for want of a better word, is addiction recovery insurance. How do you come back out of there? Whether it comes from that coaching, the counseling, even, life skills, nutrition. A lot of people blow their lives up catastrophically in addiction. And so again, when you hear some levity in times, we've got to be real. A lot of people do. They're lucky to get out of it alive. All right. Yeah. So one of the things we also do, I'm very proud of, is some of our legal services that are provided by outside attorneys. I don't provide them. I am in good standing with the bar, but I just focus on our organization. We have outside attorneys that will either for free or at reduced cost at our expense help people with things like getting a road driver's license reinstated. Well, you can't drive to work if your license is revoked. In that case, I'm thinking of the guy would, of course, still drive to work, and he'd get arrested and spend 5 or 10 days in jail. And then, of course, he'd get out, because that's, not the kind of stuff that really matters. And then he'd lose his job. So what we're trying to do is break the cycles, the barriers that then lead to relapse. Well, if I didn't have anything to live for, I might, I get it. We have to give people a real second chance. If you're not going to give them a real second chance, then don't say it. Another thing we're doing that I'm very, very proud of is for ladies, or men, but typically it's women, who have prostitution convictions from active addiction. We're going to get rid of those in the states that we can do that. And you should not be shamed in the selection process by bringing up an old prostitution conviction from 20 years ago. I'm very, very passionate on that. So if we can get it done in your circumstances, in your jurisdiction, that's something we're going to start doing. It's all about as much of a second chance as possible.
Yeah, and
I'm
I'm loving the
drug distribution charges, but on stuff like that, we'll do that. Yeah.
Very cool.
Thank you.
All right, so we've got a little under 20 minutes left. If y'all have questions, send them in. So we started talking about, special skills that people in recovery bring to the workplace. Now you said you talked about the 12-step model about making amends. If somebody is not necessarily within the 12-step format, do you think that's still something that they should stick to? Because it's readily understandable by most people outside of addiction recovery.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very laser focused on what I do, which is drug and alcohol, second chances. Not that I don't support it for other people, but we're substance abuse addiction. And whether it was fate or not, my name played perfectly into it. So I absolutely come from the 12-step model. I would suggest as a decent human being, making amends makes sense. As a lawyer, what are you making amends for? What are you putting in writing, under statutes of limitations? But for the spirit of the question you asked me, yeah. People respect true sincerity. I found that in this. I mean, people that were highly judgmental. And there still, by the way, are people professionally that don't talk to me, that still see me as a liability, but it's lessening. I know it just motivates me to work hard, because I'm so excited at the thought I might be able to show that yes, you can come back from the most serious addictions to the most serious drugs that you use the most serious ways, and show that even lawyers can have a problem with crystal. But I want to tackle that. But all addiction has the same end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course.
Okay, whether you're addicted to alcohol, marijuana, and I'm not getting into weed. I'm just saying, if you believe you're addicted to it, you're going to have the same outcome eventually as that same person with a heroin addiction.
Oh yeah.
Okay, or alcohol. Addiction has the same ends. Jails, institutions, or death, and it's death, because you can still use drugs and drink in jail.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, we all know.
So I posted in the chat here to chime in if anybody else had experience with addiction in their families or friend groups. I was asking if it's changed how you see people living with addiction. We got some people chiming in, anonymously, changing that struggles within their own families have changed the way that they see other people trying to live with addiction, and that they're trying to learn more and to understand, both personally and professionally. Jean also chimed in saying family members in recovery and still in addiction. It helps me see addiction as a disease, not a failing. We all need grace to help us through our imperfections. I think that's a really good point. We all need grace for something. If it's not addiction, you need it for something. And some days you need more than your fair share. So,
and I'm going to do a shout out to a whole group of people in America, and that's the family members on the side of addiction. And Jean, thank you for saying that. Just as the person in recovery starts to get better, the family has to get better, and they don't necessarily get better right as quickly as you do. I mean, my mother does some talking on this. I mean, the family goes to hell and back. So again, when you see me use some humor, I can just as quickly snap my fingers and say they've seen hell. All right, and this isn't the context into it, but the family goes through is devastating. It's heartbreaking. There's no other word for this disease than heartbreaking. Because what they ultimately tell you at the end is go save yourself if you can't save them, and you're left spinning in the wind. What a place to put a parent. I know of a story recently where basically some of the adult children said to the parents, do you want to lose all of us or one of us? Because they were tired of the other active addiction child's drama in the family. This disease is heartbreaking, and we need to put an end to it. And the best way we can try to put an end to it is reducing the stigma so people can get help. And that comes from breaking the stereotypes. So I will communicate with any of your audience, afterwards if they want to email me. I'd love people's thoughts on my view of this, that it starts with breaking the stereotype, reduces the stigma. Reducing the stigma lets people feel comfortable getting help. Once they get help, we give them a real second chance. And that would make a real difference in the world.
Yeah, of course.
I think.
Okay, so as people are, listening to your advice here, and they're, people who are job searching, we all, nobody lives on water and sunshine. How can you, do you have any advice for people who are trying to figure out how to kind of screen, I guess, for lack of a better word, if a company or a business has like the culture or the values that will be a good fit for them, someplace where this is not going to be a liability? Are there types of questions that you think people should ask in interviews? How do you recommend that people tackle this?
That's a great question. My first recommendation is, and it's not to be self-promotional, is reach out to us and I'll talk to people on a case-by-case basis, because I think asking in the selection process how sensitive you are to recovery could blow up wildly for some people, but it might not in other settings. And part of what we do, and I'm proud of this, is we do a little bit of investigating, so to speak, and to find out who are more recovery-friendly employers and who do believe in second chances and who also just say it. Okay, we keep it real here at the Hyer Calling Foundation, because there's the implications are too serious. And I don't want to ask our clients to go through the selection process, putting their game face on, and then get told at the end, oh, well, we can't hire you because of this, if they never had a shot in the first place. It wastes the employer's time, and it's just cruel. It's wrong. And then they get beaten down by it, and then they relapse and they die. So, if you want to ask, one question you could do is ask about the holiday parties. What I think is a better solution is, right now in this world where there's still so much stigma, reach out to us and maybe on a case-by-case basis, find out who already works there. Are there people openly in recovery? Do they, here's one. Will you let somebody go to rehab even if you're not eligible for an FMLA just because it's the right thing to do?
That's a good question.
That's going to speak to the culture. What I think is you have to be careful with that, because I think that it could also be looking like you're setting the stage against, since I'm an attorney, to have a claim for discrimination under the ADA. So, all of this is free. Your listeners are welcome to reach out to our team. The other thing I'll say is, if somebody really has no legal employment, you keep it real here, some people don't, or the employment they have, they just can't put on the resume, we will give you an internship with us in most circumstances. There's always an asterisk to help you get on the road to some professional employment. You know what I'm saying? It may be basic, but we'll do something. It's all individualized. What do you need to get back to work? If the answer is I give them an internship with us to do something to just start finding out if they're employable. Again, that's another question. You said people are asking, what should I do if I'm going to go back to work? Well, are you employable? Are you going to be able to show up, on time? Do you know how to talk about addiction appropriately? That's for the beauty of our internships. It helps us kind of like find out when the right time is. Time is everything.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so as we are talking about, your mission to, make people understand why people in recovery are, fall under the DEI umbrella. Do you recommend that people try and start affinity groups or ERGs, for these interests at their places of business?
I do, absolutely. If you're already employed there, I see no reason why you can't. I think it's a beautiful thing. Reach out to somebody in HR, and again, this is we provide services even when people aren't employed. And the only fees we charge are the organizations when we consult to them. So I'm not selling your listeners anything. I think it'd be amazing. Can you imagine how cool it would be if there was a group where people could I come back from the late 90s, early 2000s when being gay was a different thing. Remember the stickers you used to have on doors for allies, like the college professors would do. So you would know, okay, you can talk to this person, and if they don't, maybe they hate you, maybe they don't, but they're not getting into it. Okay, but you knew who you could talk to. How cool would it be if people knew at work, someone identifies as I'm safe to talk to about addiction issues at work. And you never need to tell the whole story. Doesn't mean maybe they are in recovery, maybe their spouse still has a drinking problem, maybe, it doesn't matter. Find people that would be open to it and go talk to HR. The HR managers listening, if you guys want guidance on it, I'm going to charge you for it. But I think organizations could do a lot too. Nothing's free in this world, unless you're a client. But we need to move to that. How cool would that be? How inspiring, how positive.
Yeah. So you have a lot of ideas in this area. Obviously, without giving away the secret sauce for free, or what are some other ways that employers can help to support their employees? Obviously, we do have people on the line today who are coming from the other side of this issue or from a different perspective. What do you recommend?
First starting point would be make sure your events are inclusive. If you're serving alcohol and that's the only option, and especially, again, keep it real, if the culture is that people get drunk at these events, that's fine, but you're going to have something to address the fact that not everybody's in a position to do that. Allow people to go to rehab if they come to you. Make a policy that just says, if you come to us and say you feel you have an issue, we will, after some period of time, and not on the second day, you have to figure it out. Okay, and again, I'm also not providing legal services to anybody. But with your counsel and your HR team, figure out what would it look like to change the culture here. Talk to an OD professional on it. Have people who are openly in recovery. Start an ERG group. Talk on LinkedIn about this. For example, again, I come from my own background. Remember the days of like postings that would say, women, people of color, the LGBTQ plus community are especially encouraged to apply. Imagine if you said people in recovery are especially encouraged to apply. What that would do for your image would be amazing. If it's sincere, don't do it if it's not sincere, but that's stuff you can do. But I think the best thing would be have somebody, again, be kind of open about being in recovery at the leadership level. Because if the leadership's not buying, you listen to this. If the leadership isn't buying into it, it's not going to happen. And you're better off not doing anything. Then it's just going to look insincere and people will resent you. And, but assuming that's not, you're sincere, that would be a great thing.
Yeah.
And if people also, here's a true story we had. Happened somewhere in the United States. Somebody was bidding on a job. They're in recovery, and someone else knew that. And the other person who was competing with them made sure the hiring manager knew that this person used to have a drug problem. Well, it's true. Is that dirty pool? It's very dirty. Call people out on stuff like that. And in this case, the hiring manager didn't respect it. But I'm saying that's a
for lack of a better comparison, I mean, it's basically like outing people used to be in the 90s. Like
that's why I draw it within reason. Some of this the LGBT analogy. Yeah, it was true. But and if I were, what I said to him was, well, spin it as a strength. But he didn't want to disclose it bidding on a promotion. He shouldn't have to. Yeah. So, again, I'm happy to talk to your listeners offline about some of these steps. This cultural competence training is what I'm selling on how to engage the recovery community.
I absolutely love this. Okay, so let's talk a little bit. I've got one more question about some of kind of your self-care tips, things that have really helped you out. But one thing that I want to ask is, what do you think is I'll say biggest lesson that you have learned along your life's journey up till now? Is there one lesson you think that you've learned from all of this that touches most of the aspects or is very central to the change that you experienced over your lifetime?
Yeah, I joked with my mom, as you can put this on my tombstone. I said, hard drugs like meth are evil. They are, and I've seen it, but good people can have addictions. Very good people can have addictions, and they deserve a second chance. That's what I would say, is that hard drugs have the potential to be absolutely evil. There's nothing, in my opinion, I have no problem saying meth is the root of all evil, but good people can have a problem, and they deserve a second chance.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so hit me. What are your self-care tips? What works for you to kind of be a little nicer to yourself, or to help you not necessarily advocate for yourself, I guess, but kind of recharge your batteries?
Oh, opening the sunroof, blasting Jimmy Buffett, and riding down 95 at 70 miles an hour. It depends on the day. I love music. I'm an audiophile. I love good music. My friends, my family. I mean, it's nothing that novel. I don't have a secret sauce here. We go to the gym, try to keep looking 24. It's just life like anybody has. Humor. I mean, you got to use some tasteful humor when you're in the world of recovery. So never mistake any of my humor as not taking it seriously. It's just, this is such a heavy topic. That's why I said, you're going to get Personal Method 39, do it right,
So there's so many topics that if you don't laugh, you'll cry. You know what? It's the humor that gets you through. And sometimes
here's one point.
But I'm telling you,
ending on humor, I say to people, look, for men and women overcoming alcoholism, I have such respect, because alcohol is not the demon on my shoulder. You go to lunch at the Olive Garden, they're going to offer you a glass of wine. They're not going to offer you a bump of Coke. So what I'm saying is, for people overcoming alcohol, it's everywhere. So if that's a strength, I believe, people in recovery from alcoholism, I have such respect for men and women who overcame alcohol, because it's everywhere. Yeah. I don't run into meth on the street. You can shut hard drugs out of your life. That's where it's actually ironic. There's much more judgment and stigma on the front end with drugs, but I actually think it's easier to come out of a drug addiction because you can just block those people in your phone, close the door and move on. You can't do that with alcohol. That's why alcohol sometimes is the worst of them, because it's socially acceptable, and nobody socially shoots meth, but people socially drink. Okay, so like it can take longer for people to realize they have a problem.
Yeah. Oh, of course. All right, we only have 5 minutes left. I want to make sure that we have saved time for thank yous and all of that kind of stuff. The one thing, I hope, Cindy, you don't mind me putting you on the spot here. I'm going to bring you up on stage. So y'all, I don't know if you are aware or not. Let's see, let's add Cindy up here. So Cindy is a member of the talent community. I actually met Cindy through a virtual job fair that we held over the summer. And Cindy had approached me and asked if we ever, she had an idea for an event. Is this something we'd be interested in? I wanted to highlight this not only because, Cindy, thank you so much. This has been a wonderful event that would not have happened otherwise without you. So thank you for this. But the other thing I wanted to highlight for y'all is, if you have things that you want to learn about, tell us. If you think there's somebody that we should speak to or that you want to see us talk to, let us know. We love ideas here. I don't care where they come from. If you think that there's something that we could be doing that would better serve, a segment of our community, or be doing a better job in recognition of, diversities like, invisible diversities like addiction or like recovery, just please feel free to let us know. Cindy, I was really touched when you talked to me initially about Kevin and about the Hyer Calling Foundation. But I just want to say thank you so much for reaching out. Could you tell us maybe just real quick what your involvement with Hyer Calling is, and the kinds of things that you are excited to see happen with the foundation?
Yes, am I unmuted?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. First of all, I just want to thank Meg. You're awesome. Thank God you hosted. You are the best, and I, like you, connected just through being in some of your events. I thought, this girl, she's got it going. I became involved with Hyer Calling because I heard there's a radio station, a broadcast every Friday at 3:00. I think, Kevin, it's right at 3:00 by a gentleman by the name of Gary Hendler, and Kevin was a guest on.
We sponsor Clean and Sober Radio.
Right. So so I saw Kevin. I am not ashamed to say that I have the disease of addiction. I have not had meth, but certainly alcohol, opiates, everything else, and could very easily get addicted to meth. But regardless, and I have been looking for work, and I do have a bit of a history. I don't have a felony, but I have a DUI too. And so I was very interested in what Kevin was talking about, and I feel very passionate about his foundation and what he's doing. So I immediately got on the website and volunteered, and then was thinking of ways in which I could create awareness of his foundation. And that's what brought me to you. And so far, it's been an amazing experience. I think, if anything, for anybody who's listening, I want to offer hope, because I know that for a recovering person, hope is paramount. And there have been times when I have not had hope, and Kevin gave me hope. Volunteering for his organization has given me hope. And my hope is that organizations, companies could be better educated about people. Addiction is non-discriminatory. It can affect everybody. I mean, and as far as second chances, everybody makes mistakes. Everybody deserves a second chance if they really want one, not just people who are addicted, but everybody. And I just, my hope is that maybe we can outreach or educate companies so that if they see a glitch on a background check,
Yeah.
that they're not just going to automatically toss the
Yeah.
resume.
We're trying
and
to
say,
identify second chance employers. Also in addition to selling cultural competence training, we look for sponsors. If anyone out there wants to be one of our sponsors and share their support for recovery, I will respond to your email in 24 hours. But yeah, I'm running a foundation. But well, it takes resources to do a good job, and we do a good job.
Yeah, of course.
But absolutely, we need to find, in all seriousness, guys, we need to find the employers that do believe in this, so that we can send our clients and promote in the community safer places to interview for jobs. Okay, it doesn't mean you're going to hire any particular person. It just means you're more open to it. It is so devastating for people's self-confidence to go through the selection process and get told they're not going to be hired for something. I dream of a world of a vision.
It's hard enough when you don't know. It's hard enough when you don't get the job and you don't really know what it was. It's gotta be a lot more painful when it's like, well, I know what it was and I can't change that.
And it's not the employment gaps, because that shows up on the resume.
Exactly.
It's the justice involvement. And we've even talked in some of the HR circles I travel in, and is there a professional way someone could disclose it up front? So if it is a deal breaker, because right now when people come to us, we do our own little digging through our own little network, which I don't apologize for whatsoever, because I don't want to hurt our clients.
Heck no.
But how neat would it be if you didn't have to call an outside organization to get the skinny on that,
Yeah. All right, y'all. I feel bad. I got to cut us off. So we are tight for time, but I just want to say, Kevin and Cindy as well, thank you both so much. Kevin, thank you for giving us.
Cindy's pretty amazing.
We really
don't poach our volunteers.
Yes. I put the link in the chat to where you can check out the Hyer Calling Foundation's website. We'll also be sending out more information about volunteering, as well as if you'd like to donate to the cause or want to learn more about it, in the rewatch email, as well as posting that information where the video ends up on our website, as well as on YouTube. I am so happy to have gotten to host this. Thank you both so much. I loved hosting today's session. And a huge thank you to our audience as well. Y'all brought great questions, amazing comments. We love to see the participation. So thank you so much. If this was your first Power to Fly event, I cannot wait. I hope that we see you again soon. If you are one of our frequent flyers, I cannot wait to see you again on a future event. Talk to you later, y'all. Bye.
So long.
Bye. Thank you.